Imagine a herd of antelopes migrating across an arid landscape. They have walked this exact trail hundreds of times before. The lead animal recognizes the familiar scent of water on the wind, the safe gap between the two rocky outcrops, and the faded tracks left by their own herd from the season before. Everything looks completely peaceful. But then from behind them, a strange sound shatters the silence. Shadowy figures begin to move slowly in a wide arc. Millennia of survival instinct immediately take over the entire herd, breaks into a full gallop. Ahead of them lies only a single open gap that looks completely empty and safe. Confidently, they surge into it. But as their hooves thunder across the dirt, the distance between the two lines of stones on either side of the path begins to narrow. The lead animal senses something is wrong, but it is already too late. It isn't running down an open escape route. It has just voluntarily run straight into a massive trap. Why did animals that were many times faster than us, vastly stronger than us, and equipped with eyesight, hearing, and smell, far superior to ours, fall into our ancestors' traps over and over again? The answer does not lie in a simple deep pit disguised with branches or a mindless loop of rope. The secret of prehistoric trapping lies in a much deeper psychological truth. Humans didn't need to use sheer muscle to overpower the strength of an animal. They only needed to control the very next decision that animal would make. When the antelope believed it was freely choosing a safe escape route, it had no idea that our ancestors had already made that choice for it weeks in advance. We tend to think of a trap as a static physical object sitting on the ground. But to ancient humans, a trap was a living, multi-layered system. It was a brilliant orchestration of natural terrain, cliffs, rivers, and ravines combined with man-made guiding lines of stone. The psychological pressure of hunters moving from behind and a deadly endpoint carefully concealed from view. You cannot understand a prehistoric trap by only looking at the final pit where the animal fell. The trap was the entire apparatus that systematically choked off the prey's choices until the only direction left to run was the exact direction the hunters wanted. Even millions of years ago, long before humans had the cognitive ability to stack massive stone walls across the desert, they already knew how to exploit the traps that nature had built for them. In the Rift Valley of Kenya, archaeological excavations at Olorgesailie dating back between 1.2 and 0.5 million years ago reveal an ingenious hominin strategy. Those early hunters didn't just sprint across the open savanna chasing down fast game. They recognized that the rugged terrain between the mountain slopes and the ancient lake shore forced large animals to travel through specific unavoidable bottlenecks. Our ancestors simply needed to wait in ambush at those geographical choke points. Before they learned how to reshape the landscape into a trap, humans learned how to read the landscape as a built-in trap of its own. And to do that, a successful hunt didn't begin the moment the animals started running. It began with long, silent days of observation. A hunting band would sit high on a ridge, watching a herd day after day. They tracked the shifting winds, noted the exact time the animals drank, memorized the distance that triggered their flight response, and observed which direction they turned whenever a natural predator appeared. An animal relies on its memory to survive, but humans turned that memory into prediction. Our ancestors didn't need to predict the chaotic behavior of every single individual antelope. They only needed to understand the average predictable behavior of the entire herd when it was thrown into panic. In the wild, habit is a tremendous survival advantage. Following a familiar trail helps a herd find water faster, conserves vital energy, and avoids treacherous terrain. But that habit instantly becomes a fatal vulnerability the moment another species begins to study it. A footprint in the mud told ancient hunters much more than simply which animal had passed by. To a prehistoric eye, those tracks revealed the size of the herd, their traveling speed, their daily routines, and above all, the path they always believed was safest. When a sudden threat appears, no wild animal has the time to stop and map out the terrain in its head. Their flight response always follows a few instinctive rules: move away from the closest noise head toward perceived open space, and blindly follow the body galloping right in front of you. Understanding this, the hunters didn't need to overpower the herd with brute force. They simply positioned themselves in 3 directions, leaving the 4th direction completely open. The animals, driven by survival instinct, willingly sprinted at full speed into that open gap, thinking they were cleverly escaping, completely unaware that the corridor led straight into a prepared killing zone. Herding behavior, the very biological weapon that protected gazelles from lions and cheetahs, turned into a double-edged sword when facing human beings. Out on the open plains, thousands of vigilant eyes help a herd spot predators early. But when funneled into a narrowing corridor, that herd psychology transforms into crushing physical pressure. The lead animal might sense danger ahead, but hundreds of panicked, massive bodies thundering from behind continuously push it forward. Fear spreads through the colliding bodies far faster than any visual warning about the trap waiting at the end. The herd is swept away by its own immense weight and momentum, entirely unable to turn around. Yet, curiously, when archaeologists uncover ancient stone guiding systems, the massive desert fences known as desert kites, they notice that these stone walls are actually quite low. They were never built as towering prison walls to trap the animals inside. A migrating gazelle or elk could easily leap over those stone rows with a single jump. So why didn't they jump? Because an intelligent barrier doesn't need to be an impenetrable fortress. It just needs to look slightly less appealing than the open space right next to it. In the middle of a panicked sprint, an animal's brain is desperately looking for the smoothest path of least resistance. Leaping over an unfamiliar stone wall carries the risk of a broken leg, while the flat open dirt path straight ahead looks completely effortless. Those low stone rows didn't imprison the animal's body. They hacked its instantaneous decisions in fractions of a second. And the golden rule of a perfect trap is simple: the most dangerous part of the system must always be the part the animal sees last. Our ancestors masterfully utilized every fold in the terrain, every slope, and every cluster of brush to conceal the deadly endpoint. The deep pit or the closed enclosure was always sunken into the ground or hidden just around a blind bend. The running animals only saw the guiding lines on either side and an open horizon ahead. By the time the lead animal rounded the bend and spotted the pit, its own galloping speed combined with the crushing push of the herd behind it and the narrow walls on either side stripped away any chance of correction. Speed, the very evolutionary trait that kept these animals alive on the open plains, robbed them of the precious seconds they needed to realize their path was a mistake. The absolute pinnacle of this trapping art is found in the desert kites discovered across the Middle East and arid regions of the globe. These are massive stone formations with guiding arms stretching out for kilometers, gradually converging into a large funnel that drops into deep killing pits. Some of these structures are so ancient, they date back 9,000 years. By this point, a trap was no longer a small object placed into the environment. Humans were actively redesigning and sculpting the Earth's surface, turning the landscape itself into a giant hunting machine. What is even more astonishing is what archaeologists found etched into boulders in Jordan and Saudi Arabia. 9,000-year-old rock engravings that depict exact scaled blueprints of these desert kites. Remember, a desert kite is so massive that a human standing on the ground could never see the entire structure at once. To build them, prehistoric hunters had to use extraordinary abstract spatial thinking. They visualized the massive structure in their minds from the perspective of a bird flying in the sky, carved that scaled architectural plan into stone, and then coordinated an entire community to construct it across kilometers of real-world terrain. The animals only saw the narrow dirt corridor in front of them, while the humans saw the entire interconnected system from above. Of course, a machine that massive could never work without the most important social glue of all human cooperation: a large-scale drive hunt, was a symphony of discipline. There were spotters sitting miles away to signal the herd's approach, drivers quietly applying pressure from behind, flankers hidden along the stone lines to keep the animals from breaking away, and warriors waiting at the terminal pit. They couldn't always see one another, but they operated on a synchronized rhythm. If just one person lost patience and revealed themselves a few seconds too early, the entire herd would panic, breach the low walls, and scatter into the desert. No single hunter needed to run faster than a gazelle, but the collective human group had to be more organized than the prey's panic. And unlike a spear, which only works when a human arm is actively throwing it, a trap is infrastructure. It stores the labor and knowledge of an entire community across generations. An elder hunter might have passed away seasons ago, but the lessons he taught about the prevailing winds and the heavy stones he hauled to build the guiding walls were still out there, hunting and feeding his grandchildren today. A trap is the physical embodiment of ancestral labor, working silently for the living. When archaeologists look back into the deep past, we are often deceived by stone. We find stone pits and sturdy rock walls because stone is immortal. It survives the erosion of time. But in reality, the vast majority of prehistoric trapping technology has completely vanished. Our ancestors wove massive nets from juniper bark fibers, crafted snares from animal hide, built brushwood fences from thorny branches, or simply stood in coordinated human lines to form living walls. Time and decay have eaten away all that organic evidence, leaving us with an incomplete picture. Prehistoric humans didn't just hunt with crude stone pits. They possessed a vast, sophisticated arsenal of flexible strategies built from the fabric of the forest. Yet nature is an ever-evolving adaptive machine. Animals are not static targets. They were engaged in a fierce evolutionary arms race with us. The animals that survived a drive hunt remembered the smell of the threat, remembered the shape of the stone corridors, and taught that vigilance to their offspring. A perfect trap immediately stopped being perfect the moment the survivors learned its secret. Because of this, humans could never rely on one universal trap. They had to constantly innovate, shifting to different valleys, timing different migratory seasons, and tweaking their strategies to turn the unique biology of each species, from the aggression of wild boars to the skittishness of deer, into actionable information. And when a massive desert trap succeeded, it delivered an unimaginable prize: dozens, sometimes hundreds of large animals taken down all at once. But that massive success immediately birthed an equally daunting technological problem. Capturing the herd was only half the battle. The other half was figuring out how to prevent all that meat from rotting in the blistering desert sun before it could feed the community. The moment the hunt ended, a biological countdown clock started ticking. The entire band had to mobilize into a frantic, highly organized assembly line, skinning, butchering, smoking, drying, salting, turning sinews into bowstrings, and grinding bones into needles. The trap didn't just shape how humans hunted. It shaped the entire economic structure and social organization of the tribe around the preservation of life. When we step back and look at this entire journey, there is a profound, eerie connection between our prehistoric past and the modern world we live in today. Our ancestors conquered the wild, not by physically chaining their prey, but by subtly organizing the pathways. They designed the environment so that the most natural, effortless direction for the animal to move was the exact direction that served the hunter's goal. Today, when you look at modern human society, from the layout of grocery store aisles to the algorithms guiding our attention on social media screens, that ancient principle has never changed. Real power doesn't rely on forcing someone to bend to your will. Real power lies in structuring the environment so that the path you want them to take always looks like the easiest, most comfortable path available. The greatest leap in the history of human hunting didn't happen on the day we learned how to dig a deep pit or sharpen a stone spear. It was born on the day humans learned to step outside of their own skulls and temporarily view the world through the mind of another species. They had to ask, what is the antelope seeing right now? What is it most afraid of? Which path does it believe is safe? The ultimate trap was the ability to imagine and model the psychology of another living mind. The wild animals of the Pleistocene were undeniably faster and stronger than us. But humanity ascended to the top of this planet at the exact moment we learned how to take our prey's own speed, fear, and flight instincts and turn them into invisible moving parts of the very trap waiting to catch them. If you love decoding the clever survival strategies and ancient evolutionary puzzles that forged the human mind, keep exploring with Cave Curious. Because sometimes humanity's greatest technology wasn't a physical object you could hold in your hand. It was the ability to understand and predict the behavior of the world around us. We'll see you around the campfire for our next journey into the strange, uncharted corners of the human story.